and she didn't clean the plate. Why didn't she clean the plate? Because the plate was freaking broken. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Faith and thank you so much for watching. Today is a new episode in my series where I compare books to their film or TV show adaptation, and today we are doing The Housemaid. I started the book on Tuesday night, finished it Wednesday, and then I just watched the movie today, aka Friday, so it's pretty fresh in the brain right now. I do have a couple quick disclaimers I need to get out of the way before we get into it. As always for this series, this video will contain spoilers, so if you haven't read the book and or watched the movie, I would not watch this video. As always, I'm going to focus more on the differences than the similarities, and as always, I cannot cover every single difference between the book and the movie or else we would be here for hours. So I've made a list of about 20 differences that stuck out to me while watching the movie. Some of them are major differences while others are kind of just minor things that stuck out to me. This video might be a bit faster paced than the others just because for some of these there's not much to say other than, oh, this is different. And lastly, I did my best to make sure I talk about everything in timeline order according to the book, not the movie. There are a couple things I'm going to talk about out of order just because it flows better with what I'm going to talk about. However, for the most part, everything is in order based on when it happened in the book. Now that all the boring stuff is out of the way, let's get into it. So first, the movie did not have the prologue that the book had. The movie picks up right at chapter 1 with Millie arriving to the Winchester's house. I liked the prologue and I like when movies include prologues like we saw in the book. So I'm kind of bummed that they made that change. However, it kind of makes sense that they didn't have it in there just because of how much they changed the ending. That being said, I still think they could have done it to fit their ending without giving away that they changed the ending, but I guess they just didn't want to do that. And then we have the most important room in the book and the movie, the attic. I didn't like that change at all. In the book, the room is very, very small. It fits a cot, a small bookshelf, and a small dresser, and that's literally it. It's compared to a closet a lot, and I'm pretty sure at one point they do actually say that their supply closet is bigger than the room in the attic. In the movie, while the room isn't excessively large, it's still pretty big. It also has a normal twin-size bed instead of a cot, and I'm pretty sure in the movie there is also only a small dresser and small bookshelf. However, there is plenty of space beyond those three furniture items, when in the book it's described as pretty cramped. At least that's how I took it. I didn't really like that change. I think it would have felt a lot more claustrophobic if it was as small as it was described in the book. But moving on from that, in the movie, Nina made Millie believe that she was pregnant. In the book, Nina does say that she's expecting, and I forget Millie's exact response to that, but Nina's response to Millie was, oh, well, I'm not actually expecting right now, but we're going to be soon. But in the movie, she lets Millie believe that she is currently pregnant, and it's not revealed to Millie that she's not actually pregnant until the PTA meeting. And then we have a pretty minor change, which was the glasses that Millie wore in the interview. In both the book and the movie, Millie wears glasses to the interview, and then when she comes to officially move in, Nina questions where her glasses are, and then Millie says, oh, it's the contacts. From what I remember in the book, it is brought up again, and Nina's like, oh, so you're a liar. But then in the movie, it's never mentioned again that I noticed. I just thought that was an interesting choice in the movie because that made the glasses thing pretty much pointless. I wouldn't call this a major change, but I also don't think I would call it a minor change because I was really looking forward to seeing it. The peanut butter. In the book, Millie gives Cece, I'm pretty sure it was a peanut butter sandwich, and then Cece's screaming, oh my god, she's trying to kill me. Nina rushes in claiming to have told Millie that Cece's allergic to peanut butter, which she never did. And then Andrew reveals that Cece isn't allergic to peanut butter, but then in the end we learn that she really was allergic to peanut butter. But the peanut butter is not mentioned at all in the movie, and that kind of bummed me out because I thought that that was a really cool plot point. Cool as in this is a thriller and it helps play into the mind games. Honestly, I would have rather the glasses part be cut out in the movie than the peanut butter. In the movie, Nina's physical appearance isn't mentioned to have changed at all other than the roots of her hair. However, in the book, Millie sees an old family photo and notices that Nina has gained roughly 50 pounds, I think she says. Which of course, after finishing the book, we know that she was doing so to make herself unattractive to Andrew. That was just a really big plot point in the book, which is why I'm bringing it up in this video. And in the book, that is also the reason that Nina gives Millie her old clothes. Nina gives Millie the clothes less than 20% into the book. In the book, Nina said she was going through her closet and noticed that these clothes were way too small, and that's why she gave Millie the clothes. In the movie, I can't remember the exact incident that made Nina give Millie the clothes, but I know it was much, much later. In the book, Nina calls Millie and says that she needs to pick Cece up from Winter Academy, but Millie has to figure out that it's actually Windsor Academy. When she arrives at the school, Cece says she's not going with Millie, she's going with her friend's mom who takes her to karate every single week. In the movie, Nina says Millie has to pick Cece up from ballet, but when she gets to the ballet class, Cece says no, she's going with her friend for a sleepover that night. From what I can tell, that change didn't really affect the plot at all. Again, it's just something I noticed. Another change that really had no effect on the plot was the sink scene. In the book, there's a scene where Nina catches Millie in the bathroom and makes her clean the sink. Nina is super critical of the way she did it and was like, well, what if you're not actually doing it like that when I'm not around? It was just an extra scene from the book that made me be like, oh, Nina is crazy. That was cut out of the movie. Also, going over this has made me realize that they kind of downplayed how crazy Nina was acting in the movie just because of how much they cut out from the book. So I guess it's kind of good that the movie added the whole house fire thing. In the movie, Millie and Andrew are talking and Andrew reveals that Nina's parents died in a house fire when Nina was a kid. And then Andrew mentions that people, I'm pretty sure including the police, believe that Nina is the one who started the fire. I don't remember that being a thing in the book at all. And of course we learn that Nina didn't actually start the fire because Nina isn't actually crazy. Speaking of parents, in the book, Andrew's mom ships them a box of a bunch of his old baby clothes. In the movie, instead of shipping boxes of baby clothes, she actually brings them a box of old fine china that she has. And of course, that is a very important change for the movie just because that china plays into the ending that they changed. I think this part was changed for time because this plot point does last a little bit longer in the book than it did in the movie. In the book, Nina has been talking about this Broadway show that she really wants to see, so Andrew goes to Millie and says, hey, figure out when she's free and then get us some tickets for it. But in the movie, Nina goes to Millie and say Andrew has been wanting to see it and they need to buy tickets for this Saturday. Because of the bigger changes in the last half of the movie, this change does kind of make more sense in the movie. And of course we know Nina didn't end up going to that show and instead Andrew and Millie went. The date night scene was really dragged out in the movie. Their dinner was dragged out a lot longer than it was in the book from what I remember. And this does actually make sense because the movie cut out a lot of her interactions with Andrew and we don't get her inner dialogue of, oh, I kind of think Andrew's attractive. So the movie kind of needed that dinner or else their relationship after that wouldn't really have made any sense. But the dinner's not the only thing that got dragged out because they also decided to add a sex scene. I'm gonna be completely honest, I think they only added that scene because it was Sydney Sweeney. I don't think that was necessary to add at all. They could have easily just implied it, but it is what it is, I guess. One minor change after date night is that Nina didn't make Millie take photos of the food while she was grocery shopping. I love that part in the book, and I think this kind of goes with what I said earlier when I said that the movie didn't do a very good job at portraying how crazy Nina was acting in the book. But that was a minor change and didn't really affect the plot at all. However, a pretty big change was that instead of being accused of shoplifting, Millie was accused of stealing a car. In the book, when Millie goes grocery shopping, she calls the store and says, hey, this girl is shoplifting from you guys. But in the movie, Nina gave Millie her car keys and basically said, here, take my car because people are talking about how trashy your car is. So Millie, with Nina's permission, takes the car, and when she's done doing grocery shopping and putting the groceries in the back, the cops pull up and detain her. But Andrew shows up and gets her out of it. That didn't really affect the plot much because still almost immediately after, Andrew splits with Nina. And we're gonna go ahead and jump to Nina's backstory. As we know, Andrew locked her in the attic and then got her locked up in a mental institution. In the book afterwards, Andrew was actually able to convince Nina that she was crazy and that never happened. I actually really liked that in the book because it showed just how insane Andrew was. In the movie, she never thought she was crazy. She knew that what happened really did happen. In both the book and the movie do mention that he kind of brainwashed her friends. However, in the book we get an example with Suzanne, how she's telling Suzanne, oh my gosh, this is really happening, you have to help me. And then Suzanne rats her out to Andrew that, hey, just so you know, she's going a little crazy again. And again, I do wish that was in the movie because it's just another example of how crazy Andrew was. Other than that, I feel like Nina's backstory was fairly accurate. Things were just cut out instead of changed. And right now you might be like, Faith, there's a really important character in the book that you still haven't talked about. Enzo. I guess I've just been ignoring his existence up to this point, just like the movie did, because he was barely in the movie. I loved Enzo, so I'm actually really bummed about that. I didn't mention this earlier because I kind of wanted to talk about Enzo all at one time. In the book, Enzo pretends to not speak or understand English. In the movie, the first sentence that Enzo says to Millie is a perfect English sentence. I guess if the movie would have had that, oh, he doesn't understand English, oh wait, he does, he would have had to have been in it a lot more, so them cutting down his character, it didn't really make sense for them to have that in there. But again, I loved Enzo and I wanted him to be in the movie more than he was. And in the book, Enzo is kind of the one that makes Nina realize, hey, we gotta get Millie out of there. With the changes they made in the movie and having Cece more present than Enzo, it does make sense that Cece is the one who thought that. But again, I wanted more Enzo, so I do wish Enzo was the one that said, hey, we gotta save Millie. And now we are at the ending, which was drastically different. First, we have the broken plate instead of the book. In the book, the reason that Andrew locks Millie in the attic is because she left a couple books out on the coffee table. And the punishment that she has to do is take these 3 really heavy books and lay them on her stomach for 3 hours. In the movie, Millie was going to serve Andrew breakfast in bed when she was scared by Enzo, and she dropped it and broke the plate. And the plate was the fine china that the mom brought earlier. Andrew was like, oh, it's fine, just put it in a bag. I have a plate guy who's gonna fix it. So Millie did that, and she didn't clean the plate. Why didn't she clean the plate? Because the plate was freaking broken. So Andrew threw a little hissy fit that the plate wasn't clean and locked her in the attic. And her punishment was to take one of the broken pieces of the plate and cut her stomach 21 times because the plate shattered into 21 pieces. I will be honest, I actually prefer the movie version of that. Like I said earlier, there are parts cut from the book that showed us how crazy Andrew was. So him having her cut herself 21 times instead of just stacking books on her stomach does show us just how insane this man is. Also, this is a thriller, and the idea of cutting yourself 21 times with a broken piece of a plate is a lot scarier than stacking 3 books on your stomach for 3 hours. At least in my opinion, that is much scarier. And then pretty much the entirety of Andrew's demise is different in the book and the movie. In both the book and the movie, Millie is able to trap him in the attic, but what happens after is what's different. In the book, she makes him place the books on his genital region for 3 hours, and then it says, oh, you didn't do it, and then makes him do it for 5 hours. And then after that, she makes him pull out his teeth. In the movie, she gives him the pliers to rip out his teeth, and he says no. So she starts breaking the rest of the fine china set, and that does kind of set him off, and he does pull out his tooth. In the book, he does end up pulling out multiple teeth, and in the movie, it is just one. In the book, after Millie tells him to pull out his teeth, it switches back to Nina's point of view, and it has Nina coming back to the house to rescue Millie, and at that point, Andrew had been locked in the attic a week, and he is dead. In the movie, it doesn't say the exact time that Nina comes back. However, I do believe it is the same day that Andrew gets trapped in the attic. Nina ends up unlocking the attic because she believes that Millie is in there, but it's not, and Andrew actually gets out and attacks Nina. Millie hits Andrew so that he gets off Nina, and then he goes for Millie instead. Thankfully, Millie is able to get away, but Andrew goes after her and then sees that the door is wide open and assumes that Millie ran away. So he goes back upstairs to Nina and basically is like, Nina, girl, you're nothing without me, you need to stay with me. Nina is basically like, dude, you're a stupid phony, and then Millie comes and pushes him over the railing and he falls to his death. So yeah, the 2 endings are pretty different. I don't know other people's opinions on this, however, I will say I actually think both endings work very well for their format. I think that if the movie ended the way that the book did, people would say that it was kind of anticlimactic, because honestly, for a movie, that would be a pretty anticlimactic ending. However, I think the book ending works very well in the book. So even though one day I would love to watch an adaptation that is 100% accurate to its source material, I actually really liked both endings. In both the book and the movie, Nina essentially tells Millie, hey, this isn't your fault, leave, I will take the fall for this. Nina is talking to the police, and the officer essentially says, listen, I know that this wasn't an accident, however, I'm related to Andrew's ex-fiance, and let's just say he deserved this, so we're gonna go ahead and say it was an accident. In the book, the officer is the father of the ex-fiance, and in the movie, the officer is the sister of the ex-fiance. Not a big change, just again, something I noticed. Andrew's mom's reaction is vastly different in the book and the movie. In the book, the mom says, if you don't take care of your teeth, you don't get to have teeth, and I thought he learned that lesson when I pulled out his baby teeth with pliers. And then she says, I'm glad you stepped up and taught him a lesson. So essentially, her reaction in the book is, good job, girl. In the movie, she says the same thing about if you don't take care of your smile, you don't deserve to have it. However, there's no praise for teaching him that lesson. Her reaction is essentially, I know what you did to my son. But like not in the oddly giddy way that she was in the book. In the last change I noticed was that in the movie, Millie was at his funeral. That's not really a major change. It didn't affect the plot at all because, I mean, at that point, the plot is pretty much done. She still got the money, and in both the book and the movie, it ends with her going to a new house to be the housemaid there. The lady said Nina highly recommended her, and then we get visual cues that she is being abused by the husband, and it's implied that Millie is going to do exactly to her husband what she did to Andrew. And that was The Housemaid. Normally, I try to add a new episode to this series on the last Sunday of each month. However, because it's opening weekend and because I didn't do one of these last month, I decided to do it this weekend. So far for this series, I have done A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, Jurassic Park, Alice in Wonderland, Little Woman, and It. So if any of those interest you, you should go check them out. Next month, I will be doing the adaptation of People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I know I just said I like to do these on the last Sunday of the month. However, for that one, I also might try to do it opening weekend. But we will see, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. But I think that is all that I have for you guys today. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow my Instagram and my TikTok. Both are linked in the description below for more bookish content. I am wishing a very Merry Christmas to all those who celebrate. Love you guys. Bye!